animation is extremely difficult to master. There is an abundance of complex and technical skills that go into it I can't even fathom. But these are what gives us all the incredible anime we watch. Yet as good as an animator can be, working in an anime industry comes with its own struggles, needing to meet deadlines, workers time crunching, cutting corners here and there, or maybe just straight up being lazy. But to then add on top of that, the amount of anime that try to stay faithful to the manga and being extremely challenging to replicate, such as Berserk or One Punch Man, where it can end up being a very underwhelming outcome, especially with Berserk, using many CGI elements to make it look very uncanny. And with the more and more anime that do this, the more it gave CGI within anime a pretty bad rep. In truth, there are quite a handful of horrible CGI in anime, but there are also several really good ones that take advantage of its 3D animation. It's interesting to compare what strengths CGI has with its weaknesses. There's some really bad CGI that really make you question, like some scenes in Baki with a bit of an infamous scene that looks really stupid. Or there's this abomination of a creature. I can't even tell if this was done on purpose or as a joke, since there is also this scene where it's so obviously just a real human being operating a harvester with some anime guy's face pasted onto him. I mean, it's pretty hilarious. Or when there's this anime that tried to make an oddly realistic bear for some reason, which is just... why? It does make sense on why CGI within the anime scene has been put in a bad light, since, well, some of it looks horribly atrocious. So, with some, the idea of CGI even being in an anime is an instant concern. Even so, when there are anime that use it in such an exceptional way, it is a whole nother talent in itself. With many examples such as the JoJo openings, with its highly impressive 3D models being very expressive with such fluid movements, then the use of many vibrant colors to really make it that much more captivating. Each 3D opening is so special in its own way. It's an ingenious way of using CGI. It looks so good that a part of me wants to see the whole anime like this. JoJo CGI is just on a whole different level. Oh no, what is this? What happened? Why does it look like this? I guess 3D isn't always perfect. But you do get many times like this in anime where some CGI can creep out of nowhere. A lot of the time it isn't really a big deal. You may see some characters in the background or an army and crowd not seeming quite right, but it's whatever, it's not going to ruin much. And to some, they may not even notice it. So it is what it is. But when it becomes a lot more noticeable, that's when it becomes a problem. Or you get funny ones like this One Piece scene, where it looks like a PS1 cutscene. I love it. One Piece gets a pass since it's pretty old. Nonetheless, there is some CGI that isn't necessarily bad, but still looks a little out of place, such as the later season of Attack on Titan, with many of its founding titans. The 3D animation isn't awful, but considering everything else, it kinda stands out in a very odd way, especially when you compare it to the earlier seasons, where the titans are fully 2D drawn. It's really impressive with its style and movements. It's not great all the time, it still used CGI on occasions, but I find the older ones to be much more inspiring. The newer seasons are stiffer with less emotion. Like I said, it's not bad, yet nowhere near as good as the Titans before. However, an anime that has well thought out 3D animation is the first Slam Dunk movie, and this is pretty much my excuse to talk about Slam Dunk, since I love it immensely. The first Slam Dunk uses its animation in a smart way. It does its best to replicate the sport realistically, with all kinds of different movements to resemble an accurate representation of a real basketball game. It uses a lot of motion capture, and it also consulted basketball players to get the moves down as accurately as possible, and as realistic as it sounds, it still doesn't go too overboard, since the characters' faces are still 2D drawn on, so it still makes the characters show plenty of expressions without the possibility of sacrificing any emotion. It's impressive CGI that makes sense with the whole context. It works great to make the basketball game super tense. I was so invested when I watched this movie, yet it does come as a mixed bag to some. since in their mind, even though the animation is good, it can look off-putting in some places, and when you compare it to the manga, many of the moments feel less impactful, which I do understand to a point, but when I do look at the original Slam Dunk anime, it hasn't aged the best when you compare it to the insanely dramatic panel scenes, but it makes sense. The anime was released back in 1993, yet since the movie was released in 2022, it hasn't got as many limitations and has a lot more to work with. For me, I find the CGI to work better than the 1993 anime, to really capture the essence of basketball. I still don't think it's as good as the art of the manga, but it's definitely an upgrade. I can understand why it might be weird to some, since it does combine 2D and 3D, where it does switch between the two often, or even show both at the same time. It honestly doesn't bother me, but I do get it. At least it's not like this. I mean, I don't even know what the thought process was behind this one. X-Arm is something. I obviously don't need to explain why it's horrid. You just look at it for a second and suddenly become very confused with questions in your head on why it was even conceived. It's also still and emotionless. I've never seen anything that does CGI like this. Why not just make it 2D? I don't know. I don't even want to question it. It's too strange. Did I even watch this anime? No. It's one of those shows you see 2 seconds of and can tell that this is some utter garbage that you shouldn't waste your time on. And when you look at this, you'd think it was probably made in the early 2000s maybe. But no, this was made in 2021. I mean, there is no excuse for how this even looks. Anime like this are ones where I really don't understand why they were chosen to be 3D instead of 2D. Take Arjun or Knights of Sidonia for example. They both look so ugly, with all these characters being so expressionless and dull. It's cheap looking. We're taking a glance at any character with the way they show emotion, I suppose, gives them the personality of a cardboard cutout. It's so hideous. I'll give it that not all the CGI used is bad. The surroundings and atmosphere around is acceptable enough, yet when it comes down to the people, I hate it. It doesn't make very much sense to me on why it wasn't just hand drawn. A good demonstration is a bit of how Demon Slayer executes its animation by having a good mix of both 3D and 2D. The way it does this in Demon Slayer is having the characters hand drawn very well, the same with the attack patterns and techniques used, but then have a lot of the backgrounds be in 3D, creating this sort of battlefield for all the fighting to go down. It honestly works extremely well by designing some of the greatest action scenes in anime I've ever seen. It uses its CGI surroundings to enhance the action to an insane level to make its creativity run wild. I will admit, the CGI isn't always the best. It can seem a little strange, though I've always pretty much seen Demon Slayer as a 2D and 3D anime, so parts like these aren't too much of a surprise to me. Nevertheless, if we want to talk about some real impressive CGI, then look no further than the anime that is renowned for being so admirable and fascinating with its animation, being in a league of its own, which is none other than Land of the Lustrous. This anime is one of a kind, by proving how much CGI can work exceptionally well. The first second of the series stuns you with this lush greenery of nature. And within these few seconds, I knew in my heart that this anime was going to show some outstanding animation in a way I've never seen before. It delivered my expectations magnificently. Land of the Lustrous is so fascinating. It's such a reformed take on CGI anime, to the point where I see this show working so much better in 3D than 2D. It's spectacular. The environments are so lively with its huge playing fields, making everything feel so alive. The anime is so colourful, especially when it comes to the characters, each one having distinct hair colours, correlating to what kind of mineral they are. It helps a lot to make each one stand out, which was very much needed, since before watching I read a few chapters of the manga, and for me it was so hard to tell who was who and who exactly was talking, so the colourfulness of the anime is a great addition. The way the hair is on the characters is a nice touch. To use its CGI to make it a bit translucent, giving it a gem-like feel, it's real smart. Most importantly, the characters show emotion with their expressions. It doesn't look bland or boring, they actually feel like breathing human beings, even though they're gems. The movements are smooth, not feeling stiff, and the fluidity of the action feels natural. This is what CGI in anime should take notes from. Land of the Lustrous is so gorgeous. When it's used right, it's so surprising on what CGI in anime can really achieve. CGI within anime has always received some mixed opinion among the audiences. Some are probably not too bothered by it and seem to focus more to the story than the actual animation. Others would think it's a complete abomination, being a complete disgrace to its source material, or it just looks absolutely horrendous to them. Then there are those who watch anime with some great and competent CGI that immerses the viewer with its style as much as a 2D anime could do, knowing that there is more to CGI in anime some don't understand yet. With my take, I agree with all of these. Since CGI can be quite complicated, it can look good or just blatantly bad, so I feel a bit indecisive on if I would say CGI in anime is actually good. It's more of a 50-50. I still remember back in the day, 14-year-old me would detest any sight of CGI within the anime I liked. Even if it was the slightest little bit in a few second scene, I probably would have hated the first Slam Dunks animation back then. Heck, maybe even the Land of Lustrous, which is incredibly short-sighted and ignorant, since you can find some genuinely unique anime that uses the strengths that CGI possesses. Even though CGI is progressing, getting better by the years, there is still going to be some CGI that look terrible. Even shows in 2D can be quite underwhelming at times, but it's mostly the 3D side that gets the short end of the stick. In spite of that, I think you should focus on the positives it can bring, instead of dwelling on some of the negatives. Since there is an abundance of creativity when CGI is dealt with correctly, it can produce some real masterpieces.